Hi, I'm Ashley from sellmycomicbooks.com. If you've agreed to sell a collection of comic books to us and it's time to box them up to ship, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to go from big stacks of comic books all over your dining table to secure shipments that will get to us in one piece and preserve those 50, 60, 70-year-old comic books in the best shape possible. So let's get started. I apologize in advance if some of the angles look a bit strange. I'm either having to use my laptop camera or I'm using my phone with one hand and it's a little difficult to get it exactly right, but you should get the gist of it. So if you recall, the first set of videos were about how to ship comics when they're already protected by bags and boards. The great thing about bags and boards is they have a little bit of a border around the comic book, so if something happens in transit or you accidentally, like one slips through your fingers, there's a little bit of protection around the comic book to protect it from getting dinged. Of course, it's not bulletproof, but it is some kind of insurance. Now, when you're shipping books that are not bagged and boarded, you have to be a little bit more careful as a consequence, because they don't have that extra protection of the cardboard and the plastic bag. So what I really recommend you do is you still try and make bricks, but you're going to use clean, new shopping bags to put around the brick of books to protect it from tape. The number one problem when you're putting together vintage comic books that are not in bags and boards is a trailing piece of tape can catch the cover, basically tear off a piece of the cover and then ruin the value of the comic book. We definitely want to avoid that. And so I'm going to show you a few tips on how to make bricks out of books that are not in bags and boards. So here I've got a 3-foot piece of bubble wrap. When we're doing books in bags and boards, they're slightly longer. You can get away with just three of those bubble wrap sections to do a non-bagged and board stack. But before we even get there, what we want to do first is just protect these from tape by putting them into fresh, clean shopping bags. You can get them from your local grocery store as long as they haven't been used. If they've been used, the danger is that you're going to have frozen food in them or something that's going to leave a residue inside the bag, a damp residue, and then the books get damp. We really want to avoid that. So open the bag and take half a brick of books. A couple more tips here. Most collections have cheaper books. What you want to do is like a little bit of extra insurance is put coverless or cheap or modern books that have little value at the ends of the stack, just in case. And what you have to be careful of here, because there's no bags and boards protecting the spines or the corners, just be careful you don't jab your fingernail into the stack and damage the corners. So just gently let it settle into a nice brick shape. Hold that in one hand, open the shopping bag, slide it inside. They fit better sideways. So now it's in the bag, what we can do is just hold the handles. Just going to move the angle a little bit so you can see a bit better. Hold the handles and just gently shake it without pulling too hard, because then you might bend the corners. And just fold over the corner like that, the handles like that, and now you can just kind of gently pull it tight. So now you've got a protected half stack of comic books. We're going to repeat that again and then wrap it in bubble wrap. So again, this is the second half of this first brick. Some of these are actually in bags, but they're sort of lumped together in lots. The cheap stuff here. This is Black Hawk from like 1955 or something. '59, okay, a bit later. Still, it's over 50 years old, so we really want to make sure it doesn't get damaged in transit. So, you know, I'm just going to take something cheap and put it on the top. You got cheaper books, like here's a 1990s book, so it's actually a key issue. Fold that over. And I'm just going to put that again inside the shopping bag. Gently, gently, you don't want to catch the corners. Okay, and then fold the bag round. So now you've got a nice half brick. There's 2 of those to make a full brick. Remember I said you can use a 3-foot piece of bubble wrap instead of a 4-foot because they're slightly shorter. by the time you've got a stack, it adds up. So I'm just going to drop that like this. Drop this like that. Now you want to try and square them up as much as you can, like you did before with bagged and boarded edition. Exactly the same process. Protecting the books, keeping them as square as you can so they're sort of a brick. Try not to lose the end of the tape. Nice 8 or 9 inch piece of tape, 10 inch, 12 inch, whatever. Just want to wrap it end to end to keep the brick in a nice solid mass. Then switch to the side. I'd love to show you this from the side because what I'm doing is I'm sticking the books over the edge of the table. Here's the edge of the table. I'm just sticking the books, can we back up a bit? Yeah, there's the edge of the table, right? So I'm sticking the books slightly over the edge of the table without risking dropping them. Nice big piece of tape. Go over the seam, so it protects the seam, where the two pieces of bubble wrap join. Now I don't have to worry about catching tape on the books because we've protected them with those plastic shopping bags. Wrap it around, stand it gently on the end. Remember, we're not protected by bags and boards this time, so we have to be a little bit more gentle when we're handling these until they're completely covered in bubble wrap, and then they're like a brick. This, nice and tight, but not quite as tight as when you were doing the bagged and boarded comics, just a slightly less. You don't want to really strangle them because there's no protection from cardboard like that. I'm just going to do one more reinforcing piece here. And now you've got a brick. They're waterproof, pretty much. I mean, clearly if this got dropped in a pond it wouldn't be waterproof, but it's water resistant, I guess. It's solid, it's not going to move around in transit. You don't want to waste time taping these corners because they're just going to fold over on their own when you put them into a box. And that's that. I'm just going to come back onto screen. So to recap, what we're trying to create is a brick of comic books that is totally protected from all sides without over taping. You want to end up with something that when you shake it, there's no movement. The spines are all kind of square. The shopping bags help with that. And then I'm going to make bricks from all those stacks that I showed you just now in the kitchen. And then I'm going to find boxes, and then I'm going to pack them into the boxes, protect the corners and the bottom and the top, and they'll be ready to ship. It's as simple as that. So I'm just going to cover a few frequently asked questions by people who ship comics to us. The first one is, do I need to put all the comics into bags and boards? Well, the answer, lucky for everybody, is no. Here's a comic, Superman 168. I'm going to guess it's early 60s. 1964, mid-60s. So this book is 53 years old. Is that right? 43? 43? 53? My math is off. I'm trying to do two things at once. 53 years old. Over 50 years old, right? So, yes, we need to protect it. But, in the best case scenario, this book is worth, in this condition, about 40 bucks. So, the amount of time and effort it will take you to bag and board a collection like the one I'm doing today, which is about 1,000 books, it's going to cost you upwards of 100 bucks in just supplies, and then hours and hours of your time. Guess what? The first thing that happens when they come back to base is we take them out of the bags and boards. So you've spent the time and wasted the time, and we've spent the time and wasted the time. On top of which, some people, when they bag and board books, tape them closed. So like we have to cut the tape, and then that bag is completely wasted. So don't waste your time and money. But of course, when you're handling a stack, here's a stack of books from Superman from that same era. It's worth probably about $400, $500 maybe, once it's sold on eBay. Of course, you have to be a little careful with it. You have to treat them with a little respect because they're old and they're in decent shape. These are in really decent shape. And you can't just do what you do when they're in bags and boards because you haven't got that protection of the cardboard. So I'm just going to quickly pan down here with my laptop. Sorry about the weird screen angle. And you can see here I'm ready to make another brick. I've got the bags ready. This bag's already done. I've got bubble wrap on my table. So the first thing you do when you square off the books, gently, gently hold them upright, let them, like a pack of cards, when you're shuffling a pack of cards, you kind of end up tamping them all together into a brick. Exactly the same process with comic books. They're just like big playing cards. So unlike playing cards, you don't want to bend them to riffle them and stuff like that. I'm just being silly, but so just remember that you don't want to catch the corners. This is a very, very possible fault that can happen if you're not careful with them. Make sure that the bags you use are brand new bags. Do not use old dirty bags, or worse, ones that have had frozen food in. You can see how much easier this is to do than bagging and boarding a whole bunch of comic books. It takes less than a minute per brick, and there's 30 books there. So keep the back covers on the bottom of the bubble wrap, and when you take the other heap, face cover to cover, so that the backs are sticking out and the front covers, which are slightly more precious. If there's something going to get damaged, you want the back to be damaged, are facing inwards. And by doing this, you've got half the spines at this side and half the spines at the other side, and they kind of square off much more easily. I actually find it easier to make bricks when they're not bagged and boarded, because bags and boards slide around like crazy. So then you just literally wrap this, tape it shut, tape the sides, and you're done. That's it. I'm just going to cover a couple of things that we really, really dislike. I mean, when we receive comic book shipments, people have all kinds of creative solutions to the problem of protecting comics in transit. So while I'm taping this latest brick closed, because I've got about 100 of these to do, that's a bit of an exaggeration, maybe 50, I'm just going to tell you some of the things we really dislike back in the office. And it's not my problem, it's Sean's. Sean's the one who has to undo all these things, the poor guy. So after doing this together for 2 years full time, we've seen pretty much every possible solution to sending comic books in the mail, and most of them are quite creative but not very helpful. So first things first, do not, under any circumstances, put every single comic book inside its own freezer bag and then seal them closed with Ziplocs. Sean will personally hunt you down and cut off your toes and feed them to his dog if you do that. He hates that so much that I think he'd rather not even buy your collection if that's how you're planning to ship them. Do not use freezer bags. If you're going to use freezer bags as a last resort, get the huge ones and put a stack like I showed you of 20 or 30 books inside carefully so you don't catch the corners, and then just flap it closed. Do not use the Ziploc, because when you do that, he has to cut them open. He hates that too. If at all possible, don't go there. Do not use freezer bags. The next thing, which was actually hilarious, it's the first, we've never seen one like this before. Do not wrap each comic book in tin foil or wax paper. Believe it or not, we received a collection from an old gentleman who had taken probably $100 worth of wax paper and layered it between every single book in the box. The books actually weren't very well protected. They were kind of like flapping about inside the box, but they had all this wax paper inside. Why wax paper, I don't know. And I said tinfoil as a kind of a joke, because so far so good. We haven't actually had a collection arrive wrapped in tinfoil, but it's only a matter of time. That's why I'm making this series of videos, to show you how to protect comic books in transit. This is easy, right? It took me a minute and a half and I was making a video at the same time. If I was just doing this and listening to music or whatever, I could get this done in less than that time, and the collection of 50 bundles like this will take me an hour or two max. Save yourself time, save us time. Right? The more time it takes us to open your comic books, the longer it's going to take to verify that they're okay and make you receive the payment. So just help everybody by being a bit smarter about it and follow these instructions to the letter, and we'll all be okay. One more great tip that's going to save you loads of time and trouble. As I'm putting together these bricks, I'm realizing something important. A brick of about the same size as a bagged and boarded stack will contain about 60 comics. There are easily 30 inside there, and it's still nice and secure and solid. When I've got this stack here, there's another 30 there. Because the bags and boards adds a lot of thickness, you can't use too many, and also they slide around. They're really hard to get square. When you're using raw books that are not in bags and boards, they kind of not stick to each other, but they're rougher, so they don't slide. And as I said just now, you can fit more comfortably into one brick. So you're probably looking at 50 to 60, or even maybe more modern books with less pages, 70 books without any danger of them getting damaged. If you go much too big, imagine a stack of books about 100, 150 high. Once or twice that's happened to me. Someone sent me, they followed the instructions on making bricks, but the bricks are so big that they break free from the bubble wrap in transit. And I unfortunately had to return a collection that was in mint condition when it was shown to me, and by the time it arrived, it moved around so much and it damaged all the corners of the books, and consequently I had to return it for a refund. So we want to avoid that at all costs, because these things are rare in high grade, and these things are really nice. I want Sean to receive them in great shape, so that's another tip that will save you hours and hours of time, not to mention bubble wrap and bags. I've got one more tip for you. Now I'm making these bricks a little bigger. I'm up to about 60 books. Sometimes when you have more books in the stack of books before you put them into the bag and jiggle them about, it's harder to get them all nice and flat. I'm just going to show you what's going on here. So I've wrapped, it was flat, I wrapped around, and I've taped the first side closed. And now I can stand it up safely because it's sort of protected by bubble wrap, but there's still a few books that are sort of standing proud. So what I'm going to gently do, and when I say gently, I mean gently, just ease them into the stack. They just kind of slid out of the stack a little bit. They're a little bit proud inside the bags. They're just standing a little higher than the ones about them. So I'm just going to try gently, very gently, because you don't want to push down. Just tap them very, very gently down before you take the second side closed. At this point, they can still move a little bit, so you can sort of shuffle them about if there's a big problem, if there's several in that situation. If it's just one or two, you just want to just make sure they're about level with the others. Take the tape, tightly around the brick, and we're done again.